Russian President Vladimir Putin skips out on peace talks with Ukraine. What happens now?
Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial enters its fourth day following explosive testimony from Combs' ex-girlfriend.
And a judge rules that it's time for a new manager to turn things around at the city's notorious jail on Rikers Island.
These stories and more coming up on CJS News. Welcome to CJS News. I'm Ruby Roan.
And I'm Blythe Reese. Thank you for joining us. We start with breaking news. Russian President Vladimir Putin has bowed out of highly anticipated peace talks on the war in Ukraine. Today, the Kremlin confirmed that Putin would be skipping the talks in Istanbul. Instead, a team of low-level Russian officials will attend in his place. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky offered to take part in the talks, but since Putin won't be there, neither will he. Instead, he's sending a delegation of Ukrainian officials. Earlier this week, Putin suggested negotiations with Ukraine for the first time since 2022, saying Russia was, quote, ready to negotiate without any preconditions. But now, he will not be attending. This comes as EU leaders are threatening to increase sanctions if Putin does not accept a 30-day ceasefire starting Monday. The ceasefire has been a priority for President Trump. He has been trying to facilitate a peace deal since February. President Trump previously hinted that he might attend these talks, but will not be there today. He insists there can be no progress without him present.
Opening statements at the trial of Sean Diddy Combs began this week. He is charged with racketeering and sex trafficking. So far, the court has heard from 3 prosecution witnesses, including Diddy's former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. Ventura is the prosecution's key witness. On the stand, she described years of physical abuse and sexual coercion spanning their 11-year relationship. She also revealed that Diddy paid her $20 million in a settlement from her initial civil suit back in 2023. Her testimony is expected to last all week. Combs was arrested last September and remains in custody. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Now to the Middle East, where President Trump is on the first major foreign trip of his second term. Over the last 4 days, he visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. The 4-day trip marks a diplomatic effort to strengthen economic ties between the U.S. and the Gulf states. Earlier this week, Trump secured a $600 billion investment from Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, yesterday in Doha, he signed on a $1.2 trillion trade deal. It comes as the president faces backlash over accepting a $400 million plane from Qatar's royal family. Trump defended the move. He says that the luxury Boeing 747 will be donated to the Defense Department and will temporarily replace an aging Air Force One.
While in Saudi Arabia, Trump also made a surprise announcement that the U.S. would lift sanctions on Syria. CJS reporter Carolina Pedrazzi has more.
Ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
Shortly after President Trump made his announcement, he met with Syria's interim president and former rebel, Commander Ahmed al-Shara. Al-Shara's militias toppled Bashar al-Assad's regime last December. The decision to lift sanctions was met with jubilation in Syria. Al-Shara says it will help the country rebuild after more than a decade of civil war.
It's a historic decision. It alleviated the suffering of the people, helped advance their progress, and established the foundation of stability in the region.
The sanctions were originally imposed in 1979 and then expanded during Syria's civil war, isolating the country economically and politically for years. The White House reported that during his meeting with al-Shara, Trump also urged Syria to sign on to the Abraham Accords with Israel and assume responsibility for ISIS detention centers in northeast Syria.
So, Carolina, what will this mean for the Middle East?
Well, for Syria, this face-to-face lays the groundwork for normalization with the US, but also gives the new president, who US officials once considered a terrorist, legitimacy to rule. In terms of the wider region, Trump urged Sharia to normalize relations with Israel. Experts say that lifting the sanctions increases his willingness to do so, despite Israel's occupation of the Golan Heights in Syria.
And what will this mean for Syrians?
Well, for both the political analysts and the humanitarians that I spoke to, they say this marks a new beginning for Syria. The sanctions had prevented the reconstruction of the country's electricity, healthcare, and housing infrastructure for years. And now, millions of Syrian refugees across the world might even return home.
Thank you, Carolina. Ruby?
After more than 3 decades behind bars, Lyle and Eric Menendez are now eligible for parole. Earlier this week, a California judge resentenced the brothers, paving the way for their possible release. Convicted in 1996 for the murder of their parents, the brothers have served 35 years in prison. The resentencing comes after their defense attorneys presented new evidence suggesting long-time abuse by their father. The brothers' futures are now in the hands of California Governor Gavin Newsom and state parole board officials. Their parole hearing is set for next month.
Keep an eye on your speedometer. Starting this week, New York City drivers will face automatic traffic tickets if they speed through work zones, on bridges, and inside tunnels. A similar program already exists, but Governor Hochul and state lawmakers are extending it. Speed cameras will be installed on 7 bridges and 2 tunnels in New York City. Hochul first proposed the expansion in 2023, but faced pushback by lawmakers. This time it was agreed upon, but only until 2031, when it will then be reviewed. Speedy drivers will be charged $50 for their first violation, $75 for their second, and $100 for each subsequent violation. Cameras will be installed at some of the city's busiest roadways, including the RFK Bridge and the Midtown Tunnel.
The city's notorious jail on Rikers Island will soon be under new management. After years of violence at Rikers, a judge ruled that the city's correction department will no longer be in charge. CJS reporter Anna Kane has the story.
Problems on Rikers are decades in the making. They didn't start January 1st, 2025.
Mayor Eric Adams says the city will cooperate with a federal judge's decision to strip New York City's correction department of its role in running Rikers Island. The judge, Laura Taylor Swain, ordered that Rikers, the nation's second largest jail system, will now be overseen by an independent remediation manager. The ruling comes after years of violence and disorder at Rikers, including the deaths of several inmates.
The court understands, and I think the public at large, that this is a wide sweeping problem that doesn't have a very simple remedy. And the city has been given a long period of time to try to comply in their own ways and have fallen short on many occasions.
The judge's order has its roots in a 2011 case brought by people incarcerated at Rikers. They accused correction officers of using unnecessary and excessive force.
Thanks, Anna. And finally, a new executive order by the Trump administration targets cultural institutions and museums for what it calls woke ideology. But local museums and organizations are persisting. CJS reporter John Williams is live outside the Schomburg Center in Harlem with more. John?
The Schomburg Center's newest exhibit celebrates this institution's 100th anniversary. It also pays tribute to the achievements and contributions of Black Americans. This as President Trump is attempting to, quote, restore truth and sanity to American history. One of the president's latest executive orders takes direct aim at federal museums, like the Smithsonian's American Women's History Museum and the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The order says that these organizations have come under the influence of a divisive, race-centered ideology that distorts history.
These attacks privilege a fabricated history of this country over the truthful resilience of American communities.
Right here in New York City, institutions and organizations are responding. Dr. Skylar Walks, professor and cultural nonprofit CEO, walked me through how organizations are maintaining their work and missions despite attacks and shrinking resources.
It's really important that institutions collaborate more with community organizations locally to ensure that we're resilient in our fight to remain visible.
Local institutions like the Schomburg Center, the Museum of the City of New York, and the National Jazz Museum continue to showcase exhibits with diverse history, art, and stories despite growing federal outcry and overreach.
And not only is the fight about remaining visible, it's about elevating the diverse stories that are woven into our communities.
Dr. Walks's organization is partnering with the National Jazz Museum in Harlem this summer, hosting a workshop, a film festival, walking tours, all to connect those in the community with the history and stories right around them. In Harlem, John Williams, CJS News.
Thanks, John. That's John Williams reporting from Harlem.
Now today is a very special day. It is our very own Juliana Giacone's birthday, but it is also our last newscast here at CJS News. Ruby, what was your favorite memory from this semester?
My favorite memory, it would be so hard to pick, but I guess my top one is getting to know all of you lovely journalists and working under the best in the field. What about you, Blythe?
I would have to agree with that, and also just getting to know everyone, see their reporting styles, and also learning from Jamie and Ron and everyone else who made this production possible. That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching CJS News. I'm Blythe Reese.
And I'm Ruby Roan. We'll see you next time.
I'm throwing.